Okay, this is the introductory video for week 2 for COM 250, and I feel like we'll have a little bit more time here to talk about the class material specifically because we don't necessarily have to go over any more of the setting the course up kind of stuff that we had to, but I certainly want every thing that I post to be in digestible bites, and so with that I do want to keep these a reasonable length for you to view, especially since these are not designed to have any level of production values necessarily, and so it probably is difficult to watch them if they are too long as well. But in week 2, we will be on kind of, going over some particulars of the blogging software and presentation software, and giving you some specific activities and exercises to do to practice those things. Beyond all that, we will also continue our coverage of personal connections in the digital age. So I hold it up again there for you. And we'll probably still need to finish up some stuff with chapters 1 and 2. We'll also move on to chapters 5 and 6. Those chapters in particular look at the ways that relationships have changed because of new media, new technologies. Indeed, social media is unique, and it's sort of the first media. It's sort of the first type of media that's really been able to be used to form, develop, and maintain relationships consistently. At least with the level of depth. Of course, in another way of looking at it, there's not necessarily anything new in that concept. We've had telephones, letters, home videos, whatever. But the book basically, especially chapter 5, what it does is it outlines a lot of kind of interpersonal or relational communication ideas, and chapter 6 as well, and applies those to digital media, computer-mediated communication, things like that. The book talks about the idea of latent ties and Facebook friends as an example of that. Those are potential relationships within a social circle that are structurally enabled but have yet to be activated. Then, of course, chapter 5 goes into the matching hypotheses. The idea that we tend to seek out relational partners that we perceive as matching ourselves in some ways, and how is that different online? What counts as matching? Usually, in interpersonal communication, has more to do with perceived matching between, say, levels of physical attractiveness, things like that. Not necessarily the same in online relationships. Digital media also provide the opportunity for disembodied identities that only exist in actions and words, and that's a huge change as well. We have historically equated bodies and physical presence as keys to knowing individuals. But that's not necessarily the case anymore. Some examples, for example, the whole catfish phenomenon, which I was on I was doing catfish before catfish was out. I showed that in a class probably 3 years ago, I guess, the documentary that the show developed off of. And so now that's kind of a part of popular culture, I think, because it captures that thing that can happen when we're not who we say we are online, and the consequences of that. Cyber affairs are another example, and that gets us into the idea of what constitutes action online. And that's talked about a little bit more in chapter 6, but is a cyber affair an affair or not? And that's a great discussion question, a great point of debate. Also, in online encounters, we can test out patterns of behavior that we're socially restricted from using. For example, research shows that men tend to use the internet to engage in more self-disclosure or emotional forms of speech, and women tend to use it to engage in task-oriented communication or honest expressions about gender roles that they might be discouraged from articulating in real life. Those are some ideas that come from the book. And also a point made in chapter 5 is, I always like to sort of break down myths about technology. In another book, we'll talk about utopian and dystopian narratives of technology, and what a utopia is and what a dystopian vision is. probably, but basically we tend to have certain ideas about technology. They just become a part of how we talk about it. We don't ever think about whether the ideas are true. And one of those things has to do with the idea that people lie on the internet. As the book points out, there's just no research to support that hypothesis. The idea that people lie on the internet more so than face to face. It makes intuitive sense, and I guess on some grand plane that we can't access, maybe it's true. But my point is, there's no research to prove it, and so it doesn't have the veracity, the weight of truth that we give it, but it becomes an easy way to talk about technology. But I always like places in this course where we can kind of dispel those myths that we just kind of about technology say without even really understanding what they mean, or is there any truth behind them. Chapter 6 looks at the idea of hyper-personal communication, something we tend to do online. That is either idealizing or demonizing people. There's not a lot of middle ground in how we respond to someone online, according to the book, and the book outlines why that happens. Chapter 6 also talks about the idea of media multiplexity. I scrolled too far down. There we go. The idea that as we conduct our relationships, we conduct our relationships through more than one medium, adding different types of media as the relationship progresses. Research shows that close relationships use more media forms. A variety of things in the notes that kind of emphasize that. Then the book also goes into some information about dating rituals in the internet and technology, and kind of various uncertainty in relational norms brought about by technology. When is the internet appropriate for a relational form of communication? And what is a friend in a world where we friend someone on Facebook and give them that label? When we may have met them once, and so those shifting definitions, disclosure on the internet, that can certainly happen. People tend to engage in too much or inappropriate disclosure on the internet sometimes. That's the lack of anonymity there are a lot of reasons for that will get articulated in the book more specifically. But the bigger point is relational norms becoming uncertain because of the internet and technology. And so let me see if there's any other big idea I wanted to hit about the material in chapters 5 and 6. The notes lay it all out more specifically. Also, research shows that people tend to use technology to express more emotional statements than we would face to face, kind of developing that other idea. And so, also, we can use the internet. We can use technology to be dishonest. When we do, we talked about that, earlier, about whether that's true or not. But when we do it, it can be more effective because we have more time to craft a message. So, if you're going to lie, you've got a better chance of telling the lie effectively if you can craft an email message or a text than if you just answer it face to face and you're out of that real-time environment. So that's another idea in chapter 6. So again, that's a summary or a preview and overview of the material to be covered in the second week. And again, also in the second week, we'll also do some more specific things with blogging and present.me, things like that. So that is our video for week 2.